Sandie, it's so great to have you back. How are you?
So good. It's so good I always like talking to you. So
I
it's
know.
like just picking up where we left off.
Agreed. We have a long history. We've known each other for a long time with way back in the day. Gosh, it feels like it goes back forever.
Yeah.
Yes, we always have fun conversations, and today will be no exception. So thank you for joining us. We are going to talk today about why your recipes aren't showing up on Google, even if you feel like you're doing everything right with SEO. We're going to just have a conversation around that. But why don't you give us a little background on who you are and what Blueberry does?
So I identify myself as a food tech consultant. My specialty is content strategy and content engineering. And all that means is that, especially for recipe platforms, I make sure that recipes do what they're supposed to do. Either they're supposed to help you find them, shop them, put them in the list, cook them with your oven. And so I've been doing this for over a decade. And now with Blueberry, I get to do that even more because I love working with different types of food tech clients like cooking apps and grocery tech. But I also love working with creators and providing more education, how they can become strategic partners with the platforms that are supposed to showcase them.
Yeah, you know a lot about us crazy food content creators, don't you? You've worked with
Love you
us for a
guys.
long time. You know the ins and outs of our businesses and kind of how we work and all of that, which I think is so valuable. And I want to just tease a little bit your book because you're writing a book. So just give us a little rundown on that.
I feel like this book has been like a decade in the making. So it's called Create Once, Share Everywhere, and it's kind of a tease to this principle of content omni-channel publishing. But it's really for creators and content professionals who feel like they're always out, their output is greater than their return. Like at the minute they stop, everything stops. But
Mm-hmm.
what they don't realize is the things that the platforms that they've been publishing on has had something really unique, really powerful, and that's called structure. And so my book's message is if your content can't be an asset unless it's structured. So in my book, I'm really helping creators understand how they can build content that lasts beyond whatever technology comes, whatever algorithm comes. And I am really excited about it because, I've been able to provide not just technical knowledge, but a journey through a mindset shift that shows that structure creates possibility. And I feel like possibility is something that creators really need right now. So I'm really excited about it coming out. The whole full draft, first draft is done. I'm in substantive editing now. So I can't wait till it comes out next spring.
Same. I can't wait to read it. That sounds so valuable. And we have a little you have a little offer at the end, just something to put out there for listeners. So stay tuned for that. So let's dig in, Sandie, shall we? Let's talk about
Yes.
our topic at hand, which is why your recipes aren't showing up on Google. So I guess to start, what do you think? What's the most common frustration? Just that we're creating this content, we're putting so much work into keyword research, and it just doesn't show up.
So it's funny because funny meaning ironic. Just I'm always talking to different creators, just casually, and someone I spoke to recently really said something that I feel like sums it up. I feel that creators, from their perspective, I mean, you are told all along structure, 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 metadata, metadata, on-site SEO, tech SEO, so that your content is very much structured. It's like great, right? It has powered the discoverability that you have needed. But then it felt like almost a betrayal because the same structure that you were told that you needed to have ended up being why your recipes were scraped by AI. So it almost was like, well, we
Hmm.
were told like this is supposed to help us, but it's not actually helping us anymore. So I think, and then of course there's that, and so That's why it's such a moral question. That's almost stronger and more at the top of people's minds than the operational one. It feels like well, it is this ethical, moral conversation that's always coming up, and I think that speaks to the heart of, a lot of things that have a lot of people's feelings around what technology has done. So, this pro tech or pro human debate really boils down to that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, well then how do we like think around this? Because this is a new way of thinking. Um, we didn't have to think this way even a couple of years ago. So how do we get around this?
So I think first and foremost, I really like to empower creators to think back on a time where, when they first started, most creators at this particular time, they've been like yourself, creating on platforms for years, and the idea of doing anything technical felt very new. It felt very overwhelming, and but you did it. There's all this SEO information, all these things about these Google platforms. So even just changing the narrative, it's like if you could do it then, you can do it now. So I just wanted to start off there first.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to the amount of information that is out, I do see a lot of experts really trying to share a lot of information with regard to, enhancing discoverability and rethinking, helping creators rethink their strategy around how they post, why they post, on their channels. And so I think it's the most important thing is really deciding that, um, you know how you did things before no longer works, but that's okay. Your content itself is still very valuable. So, picking on like something, something specific that you really want to work on and amplify, and finding those resources, because there's way more resources out there than ever before. And about like what's going on now, and it's almost like saying, okay, I never thought I would need to learn how to, use a DSLR camera, or, get into the back end of my CMS on my WordPress page. But, because of the resources that you had back then, you were able to do it now. So I think just really identifying experts and resources that, you feel don't make you feel overwhelmed, and just start plugging away at it, really trying different things out and keeping an open mind, because there's a lot of things, you don't know what you don't know. And so really, if there are like ethical concerns, really challenging the experts that are encouraging certain things, and asking the questions that you want to know about, instead of just kind of rejecting a certain path as a whole. So it's more of a mindset shift, going back to, because I think we stayed on this path for a long time, this way of discoverability, but usually, technological advances, they shift very quickly. So this is just the biggest shift that has happened in a long time.
Yeah.
But I do think that creators are able to, you know, get like not just overcome this situation, but really kind of grab them all by the horns, when they realize they're sitting on gold and that's their content.
Yeah. Yeah,
From
I
a
think you're
structural perspective. From a
right.
structural perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so like basically what you're saying is this isn't an issue, like it's not necessarily an SEO issue. We have to wrap our heads around this new way of thinking and this new mindset, and then reframing it basically.
Yeah, and it's all about, you know, I think also because, we're also zoomed in on AI, um, from a, technology perspective, but zooming out and also realizing the way people are navigating through content has changed. I always talk about this story about, when apps became a thing. Android and iPhone came out, and it's like there's an app for this, there's an app for that. And I was holding onto my BlackBerry with everything I could possibly
Yeah.
do. I just refused. I was like, I'm not going to get an iPhone. I'm not going to get an Android.
That's
I just
funny.
like my BlackBerry. But eventually I did. I, of course, it really revolutionized the way we handle our lives. And so, because human behavior has changed. So as content creators, I also think it's good to just step back and say, well, how are people's behavior? How is my behavior changing? And do I want to be part of the way people's behavior is changed? Like the content that they consume is still the same. People, in this context, still want to find recipes and cook recipes and engage and have these connections with these food creators. But the way they're navigating around that is different. And so
Mhm.
how do you keep yourself moving along with that journey, that human behavioral shift? And so understanding the way people are discovering, and finding, make sure you're there with them. I think
Yeah.
is also a good way of looking at it too.
So how do we do that? Because yeah, we all
Hmm.
are sensing that shift. We know things are
Hmm.
changing massively in the way that we all consume things. So how do we stay with people?
So when I read this article, I wrote about it in my Substack a few weeks, I don't know, a few months ago, about this idea of zero click discovery. And and that, I mean, there's so many things people are calling it now that it's adjacent to AEO. Some people say AEO
Mm.
doesn't exist, but whatever. It's just people are not like searching and then clicking. They're doing something else. They're they're prompting ChatGPT or Claude.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for a uh, sourdough recipe because I'm gluten free. So I was looking for a sourdough recipe, true story. And I did the old fashioned way, went on Google and I searched, and then I found one. And the and whatever, I'm going through the recipe card because I'm just curious how to make it. And then the content creator had the these icons to send the recipe to a chatbot, AI, Claude, the ChatGPT, Claude. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Mm-mm.
Um, yeah. And then I was talking to someone else about it, and she's a pretty big blogger, and she says she's also experimenting with that too. And I think that, and that's very low lift, and it's very low risk because it's probably a plugin of some kind, most likely. Um, I think experimentation is also good because the great thing about the the plugins that also create structure is that it allows you to experiment as well, and seeing if these solutions um, amplify your visibility towards finding finding home cooks. Are if they're I was experimenting with DuckDuckGo the other day. I
Mm-hmm.
did a post about it, and found that DuckDuckGo is not actually a search engine. And uh, but even like how it recommends food recipe sites is really interesting. So I think experimentation is really important. It's not like all or nothing. That's my point.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you find that something works for you, do your research, see like all the ins and outs, the implications, if your privacy is at risk. But, a lot of recipe sites are a really big search, you know, opportunity. And so a lot of these tech companies they're trying to find solutions, for recipe platforms for content creators. So I would say, do like experiment, like look around, click around other people's sites and see what they're doing. And the great thing about the creator community is like you could just reach out to somebody and be like, hey, I saw you do this. Like, how's that going? And if it doesn't fly with you, you don't like, you can always take it down, you know?
Yeah.
But I think, and also I think it's important to look outside of the food community because the creator economy is vast, and see how, but the implications of AI is the same across the entire creator economy because it's about IP, but also seeing like what other people are doing and what tools they're using, as well, just to kind of, open up your perspective. And I know more and more, a lot of tech companies are creating tools that are AI powered, for creators, platforms to help them, give them solutions or tools. If you're in a conversation with a solutions architect, somebody who's onboarding you with on a tool, ask them questions about, these services, these solutions. Don't just think about the end result, because it's really important, for creators to understand the way things work. Because if you understand the principles behind the way things work, you can apply that to the different parts of your business, the different parts of your content. Because a lot of the times they're also product people, engineers, and they can really break things down for you, as well. So just taking all the information, experimenting, and you can just do like a small subset of your content, that you want to kind of try things out on so that it's low risk. But that's what I would really, asking questions, experimenting, and seeing what other creators are doing across different industries.
Yeah. So you mentioned tech companies a few times and how they're looking for solutions too. Do you have any examples? Because I don't like when you say that, it's like, well,
Yeah.
what are they? I don't really, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we all, like, you see them all the time. So, Grocers List, now Grow,
Yep.
they have, these solutions, and they are using technology, for creators. I saw a whole bunch, like Allspice is another one. There's another one that I it's like, I think Mention Link is another one. There's a lot of different ones. Even Clarity, all of these companies, they're tech companies, and they're trying to find solutions. To the extent that they use AI varies, but they're tech platforms that want to work with creators. And, I think one of the things is like thinking about just, oh, this company helps me, my recipes surface better, or gives me data analytics, for my recipes. That's good. But, I don't just, I talk about what's happening now very succinctly, but I talk about what's next. How do you get all the information that you need to be ready for what's next? Because creators, everyone, we were very much not ready, in general, for what's happening now, but it doesn't always have to be that way. And so, if creators could, really leverage all these resources, um, and I to be ready for what's coming next, to position themselves, um, and their content, to last, that would be great. And so, that's what I always encourage, because the tech community and the creative community never really intersect the way that it should.
Yeah.
So I think that, but, I want to empower, creators and those listening to, if you're in a room with someone, virtually or in person, really ask them about, the things that you've seen or heard. Those are the people that can give you the answers. So
Yeah.
you want to be not just a customer, but a strategic partner. That's the ultimate goal always, especially the time that we're living in right now.
Yeah. Yeah, we are in a new time, aren't we?
Yeah,
I loved your suggestion of just going to other people's sites and kind of seeing what they're doing, and then just if you're
yeah.
curious about it, just ask them and
Just ask
like,
them. Why
how's that
not?
working? What, like the
Hmm.
Allspice Labs, I think you mentioned. I've been curious about that, and I mean, it can't hurt to just experiment and ask around. So
Yeah, I mean, this is like a unsponsored suggestion. I personally, I'm, tech agnostic, but, in the last few food creator events that I've gone to, I was very pleasantly surprised to see more tech companies in attendance
Mm,
because I think, me, Megan, I'm always an advocate for visibility when it comes to, if you are a tech company, you can't serve the community without being present, without being visible, without being in a room and understanding what the pain points are.
yeah.
And I think that, there should be some healthy competition so you can have something to compare things to. I think, I think people will start to see more and more of these kinds of founders and startups attending because despite what creators may think, they know the value of a creator economy. They will never thrive without them.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't feel like that, it doesn't feel, that's not, they're not saying that openly in a room, but I'm telling you, you know, that's exactly how it is. I think just, seeing what creators can really get out of those partnerships in a really substantial way.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be had.
Yeah. I totally agree. So can you kind of just lay out the differences or like define like blog content, which is what we used to define. I mean, that's all we used to focus on was blog content,
Yeah.
and then structured content. What is the difference?
So I think from a creator perspective, it's actually the same thing. So in the beginning, back in the blogger universe, when we had like the Google Blogger, it was just a block of text, right? But the rise of the recipe plugin um, actually has made content more structured. So this structured content is a principle that has been in existence for decades. And basically, you read about metadata and schema, basically the way. And the great thing about recipes is that it's inherently structured. You have the title and you have the steps, and then you have the instructions. So all of these things are modular because you're able to take those pieces of metadata and actually do a lot of things with them. You're able to shop the ingredients, you're able to add the instructions to a voice assistant. Chatbots are able to ask questions based on the different things that are part of the recipe itself. As a matter of fact, I wrote about this. I was guest posting on a Substack the other day, and I talked about, it was called the recipe paradox. Whenever I speak at a lot at a content strategy conferences, and very like nerdy SEO, not SEO, AI, content engineering type things, and they always use the recipe to describe content models. But so everyone, I would say a majority of food bloggers, your recipes are structured because you're using a recipe plugin.
Mm,
The reason why I talk about yesterday, someone sent me a comment on Facebook, and they're like, "Well, I thought, because I use this plugin, my content is structured, so I'm confused." So my message is, yes, your content is structured, but that's not all it can do because it's structured. And that's the shift that I want people to realize. Because it's structured, you have been able to do these things on your blog, but you know the solutions, the apps, like for example, when we first worked together, um, Megan, there's a lot of things we were able to do with your content because of the format of the content itself. We're able to ingest it and do certain things with it. So that was like a lot of years ago,
mm-hmm.
and so my message is to reimagine, to really think about like, oh, what can my content become because of these things? Like I met someone recently and they were like, oh, do I have to fill in all of my metadata fields? And my answer is yes, 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 you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
even if you don't, um, especially now because you don't know what possibilities will exist for you because there's certain metadata in your embedded in your content. So that's what I talk about structured content. It's those metadata fields, it's the schema page that has allowed you to be discoverable through SEO, but that's not the only way that the structured content can and has been used for omni-channel publishing, channels being off web, apps, smart assistants, uh, voice assistants,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
So for recipe cards, if you have a good recipe card, there's a lot
Yeah.
of metadata opportunities in there. So are you saying just make sure you go and fill in like keywords? I know is one option that people ignore because it's like, how is that tied to we're not sure how exactly, like,
Yeah, for
you know what I
sure.
mean? Like the fields apply.
Yeah.
So sometimes we just sweep by them, but we shouldn't do that.
Okay, so one of the tips that I always give people, because I did this like, because I always worked with proprietary websites like built from scratch. So since I've started Blueberry, I've done a bigger, deeper dive into WordPress. So I feel like I learned more about WordPress in the last few years, um, and plugins, recipe plugins. So one of the things I noticed, just because I'm in tech, is that plugins offer a lot of features, underutilized features. And so one of the things that uh, I think is really interesting, I feel like tools is a very important one, even if it's not visible on your page, because I had this huge, uh, I worked with this huge client one time, and they wanted like 1,000 microwave recipes or something like that. And then I was like, my microwave recipes, with the recipe database that I was working with at the time, like, you know, microwave recipes. And I realized because I had tools associated with all of the recipes, I could easily just kind of filter the recipes and provide those recipes to the client. So it's a way of categorizing and organizing your content, not just for listicles on your website, but say for example, here's a plug for LinkedIn. You are on LinkedIn and you find that a brand that you would love to work for is has this great initiative that you think is really cool, and you can reach out to them and say, hey, I have 500 microwave recipes that are structured and ready to go for this, this initiative that you're doing. I'd love to work with you, and I'd love to talk to you more about it. So I think you know, filling out certain fields is a way to make sure that you're sharing your content with intention and you're really ready to um, for opportunities as they come, and also surface new patterns that you may not do. Like I've talked to, I ask this question a lot. I ask people, well, if your blog disappeared tomorrow, like what would happen? Like if it just like was gone. And I'm surprised but not surprised. A lot of people don't have a library. They don't have a library for their content. That's not just stored in their CMS, in their WordPress. And the limitations of doing that is that then you're not really in control of, how your library is organized, and, just doing, just a proper inventory of the assets that you have. And the value of that is, always knowing what you have and what you don't have. A lot of creators, they if they have a lot of content, like you do, Megan, they've been sharing recipes for years and years and years. Maybe they're only optimizing 20% of their content for SEO. There's nothing wrong with that. They find that recipes really do well, and they focus on those. They optimize them. But what about the other 80%? The other 80% is also very valuable. and maybe not right now, but it could have latent potential that you just don't know about. So I think it's really important to organize and build out that library and continue looking for opportunities and using the right language when you're looking for partnerships that go beyond just a traditional CPG brand sponsorships, like whatever brand reaches out to you for a recipe development. It could be something else like a meal planning platform, or another tech platform, or whatever. Even a if a sustainability organization, it could be anything that could use your content. But especially today, a lot of people have some kind of software engineering, product, tech team, and the value of your content really goes up when your content is organized and structured in the right way, and you know how to talk about it, so that your equity goes really up a lot higher when you're able to do that.
So this all makes sense, but what if we don't know how to structure? What if we don't know which plugins to go put metadata in, and we don't know what metadata to put in? I think that's the hang up for a lot of people, is that there might be a lack of tech knowledge. Like, yeah, we have all these plugins. I don't know I don't know what's valuable for metadata in the plugins. Do I just start combing through the back end, or like how do we go about learning that?
Well, the great thing is through the uploading process now. I know the most popular one is WPRM. I actually interviewed the founder, Brett. He's a really interesting guy, and he, I think people create solutions for themselves first. So he's no different, and so that one is a really powerful one. And I think just really the next time, anyone uploads a recipe into their plugin, really kind of look through and see and think about, okay, why is this field here? And a lot of the times you can go and don't just use tools. Their support. I always hear people say, like, oh, the plugin support team that I use, they're very responsive. Ask the people what's going on with these tools that you're using. Ask them why these things are there. There shouldn't be a reason why everyone's just like confused. They have created these solutions. They're very powerful. They have a lot of possibility within them. I think that, especially in the food creator community with these plugins, a lot of opportunity is there. Creators are like 80% of the way to a lot of things. It's just knowing, like what you said, not knowing what to do, but you're already doing it by going in there and making sure that you know what it means for your content going forward, not just right now. So that would be my recommendation as well. And yeah.
Yeah, so for WPRM or for a recipe card, that makes sense because they're all pretty clear. But what about for other plugins? Because I'm sure those matter too. For example, Yoast, or I don't know, whatever else it is, like going in on the back end and just exploring that. If you have questions, reach out to the plugin owner and just ask, or Google it, or use AI to figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think any tool you should do that too, right? Because they're all so, like Yoast and Href or Ahref or whatever you use. That should just be simple, because not simple. It should be standard operating procedure. You should always go through and, on these websites, they say, oh, I can do this, and that, and most of the time there's a support person or account manager or something. And, you really want to understand. Because I'm not an SEO expert per se, I'm not as familiar with the metadata, but I do know that, that particular those particular types of plugins, I mean, to the making of plugins, right? There's no end. But if it's supposed to do something, it's supposed to, like, you're supposed to help you with your SEO, but now SEO is changing. I'm sure they're making updates and changes to it, and they're sending you updates and emails like, now we have this, now we can do that. Well, how does that connect? Because it's very much related to your content. So everything goes
Yeah.
back to your content at the end of the day, right? And so, but it's very much on platform. Yoast is going to be on the SE. Yoast is going to continue to help you with your web discoverability. But your recipe card, the structure of your content, can help you beyond your. That's why I always talk about like really understand, because the recipe plugin itself has if your content doesn't have the metadata within your recipe card, well, it doesn't matter what other plugin you put in. What if you didn't have WPRM or WP Tasty or whichever. Even if you added those other plugins, like, who cares, right? If you had an email plugin, so going back to the fundamentals of, okay, here is the plugin page. It has all these features. What are these things actually? What are they doing? And how can I apply those things to other opportunities that may come up, or what I see other people doing? Is there a relationship there? What has made this partnership easier to do? Because I've seen partnerships happen where they want to work with someone, but their content is like unusable, because, or it's just a heavier lift, to use it. It's not a traditional, it's not like traditional media. So it's important to kind of know and understand what what uh, what your structured content in those plugins actually allows you to do. And it just, like I said, going back, just simple questioning and understanding. There's a lot of information out there, and through my, I have a Substack, Blueberry Pie. I have a blog, and I write a lot about those things too. It's like open source information. Kind of just bridging the gap between, like, okay, you heard this, and you see this. Well, why should I care about that? Why is that important? What is metadata? What is structured content? I talk a lot about that in this context as well.
Yeah, so I think just knowing, if someone's listening and they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I think just knowing which plugins carry weight, like you've said, recipe card, plugin, Yoast, and then just digging into that as much as you can, and educating yourself on what metadata is, like you said, and why do you need to put in keywords on your recipe card? Where does that go? Like, where do those keywords even, like, what does it really, I don't even know what it relates to, but I fill them in because like, extensively, because of everything we're talking about. Like, it has to benefit me somehow. But just knowing that, I think, is step one, just being aware of the weight certain plugins carry, and then what metadata means. It's giving your data backend information that's valuable, and we don't really know the extent to which it carry, like Pinterest. I mean, we haven't even talked about Pinterest, but I'm sure that it relates to other platforms as well, like platforms that we don't even have on our radars right now. So just having that knowledge, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I would say that, that's really the point, because, like, it's like every time a new Google update comes, you're the people who aren't as affected as much or at all, probably were doing things that, maybe they didn't talk about. Maybe they just said, okay, well, I'm just going to have these things in place. And then, so the impact wasn't as great. Or, somehow they're surfacing to other, brands or companies, and they say, oh, well, this person's site or this person's content keeps surfacing, like I think I want to reach out to them or something like that. So I think it's more about, being ready for what's next, what's happening next, because the solutions for your website are there. You can plug away at certain things, uh, and I really encourage people to create some kind of a library. I talk about this a lot. Do not let your content only exist on your WordPress site. It needs to be someplace else that you can control and organize. And um, with the metadata, a lot of people don't know, a lot of plugins you can export uh, your
Mhm.
uh, your content in a JSON file. Like I know people don't do that a lot. I would say try that. It doesn't even matter if you don't even understand like what you're actually doing. Just click that export and just look at it and see what it is. I had a Substack that I called "Who's Jason and What's He Doing in My Recipes." Um, so it's just good to know what what's going on, and why these things are there. So the developers of a recipe plugin has put an export feature of JSON in your plugin. Why? Why did they put that there? You know, and it's overwhelming. I know I get overwhelmed too, with all the things. But my soapbox is just bringing awareness, and at least for people to say, I don't even need to know this happens. I heard Sandie say something about this. What is that?
Yeah.
When you're talking to somebody, how does that relate to me and my content? So
Yeah.
that's what I want, kind of people's wheels to be turning in their head.
So I know not everyone's going to know what you just said about JSON. Can you just briefly explain that so people aren't like, who is JSON? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. So, so Jason, JSON, JSON, people pronounce it differently. It's a programming language. It's actually, I think, the universal programming language, and it's used across platforms, apps, Alexa, and it relies on structured content and shoppability. So I tell this story sometimes. I remember being in a meeting, and I would always hear people. They would say with engineers and product, and they kept saying Jason, Jason, send the Jason. And I'm like, who in the world is Jason?
Who is this guy?
So I had to look it up, and I ended up using it a lot, even as part of the content team that I led, because it really powered in all of the the ingredient, what is that, shop this ingredient or shop these ingredient buttons that people have on their recipe card. All of those things rely on JSON code, um, and you can just export it just like that from your recipe card. So just understanding those things, and how it relates to schema and how that relates to metadata, so that when people, like for example, if a platform wants to work with you, and you ask them, okay, how are you going to get my content, or you could say, hey, my content is structured and the JSON code is clean. That is really good leverage for you know monetization opportunities, because the work that they have to do with your content also, if it's a heavy lift, then that doesn't really give you an opportunity
Yeah.
to monetize properly. So that's what JSON is, JSON, programming language.
And it's not something that you have to go like figure out necessarily, just having the
No.
knowledge, because it's taken care of if you have a good, reputable recipe card.
Yeah, but isn't that amazing? Like you don't even have to be a software engineer. All the heavy lifting has been done for you. You just have to understand
Yeah.
what's under the hood. It's like, when you get your first car, and if you have a brand new car with all the bells and whistles, and they say all you have to do is take it to get an oil change, every 8,000 miles. You don't have to build the engine yourself. Like it's just ready to go.
Yeah.
It's just understanding what's under the hood, which I always
Right.
talk about.
Yeah. Absolutely. Is there anything else? What else have we missed, Sandie, before we start saying goodbye, anything you want to mention?
Well, I just want to mention too, I know I want to go back to, AI being this moral dilemma versus operational one. I know I speak a lot about, structured content and the possibilities and, the way I present my uh, information. I'm in tech, I'm a tech person, but I also love food and food creators. And I just really encourage people to think about the future. Legacy is so important. And, this idea of disappearing, it creates a lot of angst. But there's so much opportunity and information and questions that can be answered that's out there. And, I'm actually very hopeful and really excited about the future. That's just what I'm going to keep talking about. And, if anyone has questions, like if they see something on my Substack or something that I say, I just launched a voice podcast that's called the Blueberry Podcast. And I get into a lot of nitty gritty stuff
Nice.
because I do talk about like content strategy and structured content in teams and things like that. But I feel why I like to speak to and share my content with creators is because I don't want the conversation to be so siloed anymore. I don't want tech companies to be on one side and creators to be on another. I want to create a bridge so that at least there's more information and knowledge that will empower creators to really continue to be a part of the conversation, to continue to make and have and build content that lasts not just now, but like 50 years into the future. So I'm hopeful. I'm excited. I think there's a path forward to that. So yeah, I just continue to, listen to great podcasts like this and see where you fit in and do, a little bit at a time. It doesn't have to be so vast, but just look at the tools that you have, question and use those resources, those support teams. If they have 5-minute calls with you, just ask a question that you've been wondering about. I think that will help you in the way forward.
Amazing. And I love your perspective too, just your positive approach. You're always so positive and hopeful. And I love that you're excited about the future. I think the people who are excited about what's to come right now are the ones who are just going to thrive. There's so many people who feel the exact opposite of that. So appreciate you, Sandie, and all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. You're awesome.
Yeah. Oh, you're awesome. And we kind of mentioned your book in the beginning, which I cannot wait to read. And you have an offer for people. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so my book, Create Once, Share Everywhere, I want it to be, it's a prescriptive nonfiction book. And that means I want it to be dog-eared. I'm a compulsive highlighter. I won't post it. This is not a vanity book for me. And because of that, I'm opening up an opportunity for people to become early readers of the book. And what that means is, I'll send you an advanced copy of the book before it even goes to print. So please, there's going to be probably grammatical errors or typos, but what I really want early readers to help me with is to make sure that they're being guided along the book properly. The reader journey, the messaging really lands where it's supposed to. And so I'm opening that up to them, and you'll get it. I'll send an email out like a month in advance and let them know what the timeline is. But I'm really close. I'm in substantive editing now, and I would really, want people to participate who are willing to, yeah, read the book and give me some feedback. I'd share like maybe 10 or so questions about the book, and yeah, get their feedback. So if they could email me if they're interested at hello@blueberry.co, that's blueberry with an I, and express their interest, I would love to have them. I have some in my list already, but the more the merrier. So that would be great
Awesome.
if they could join.
Awesome. That's so exciting. Yeah, again, so excited about that. And thank you for everything today. I think this just gives us a unique perspective.
Yeah.
Like the whole tech side, we don't often think through. We're just content creators putting out our amazing content, and we don't often get that side, like, oh, there's a whole tech world that we need to consider and explore. And so thank you for everything you provided today. Yeah, we will put your show notes together, Sandie. We'll put those at eblogtalk.com/blueberry with an I2. This is the second time Blueberry's been on. So you can find everything we've talked about there. And let's see, have we mentioned like social media? You did mention your email if people want to reach out that way. How else can they reach you?
They can find me on LinkedIn at Sandie Markle, and also on Instagram at Blueberry HQ, and Facebook at Blueberry HQ. Actually, in all places at Blueberry HQ.
All right. Well, go check Sandie out. And thanks again, Sandie, for being here. And thanks for listening, food bloggers. I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much.